Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Master, that's Zim Tech Guy. So in this video, we ask the questions: are we as Zimbabweans doing enough to support local musicians? But before we get into that, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. And if you do eventually end up liking the video, please give it a thumbs up. So now this video was inspired by Andy Muridzo's video. He posted a video where he basically said that Zimbabweans are not patriotic. Actually, let me just play the clip before we get into more of this.
Chedu nkomana chakarova pasho ya benai abati nongozozoti atiende international kana musingati simudzira saka mbongerai kuti rwisa mamira kuti rwisa ka ndikuti tibudirirewo nekuti imi munoda kuramba munakira mazimbabweans we are talented tinogona but imi ndimunoita kuti tinzi takadhakwa ndapedza ndini wenyu Andy Muridzo. Kana pana boy kana nezvo ndataura namba dzangu rega ndikupei. Namba dzangu dzinonzi 078 071 073 code iri 263.
So in short, to an extent, I actually agree with Andy Muridzo. Ask yourself this question: when was the last time you bought an album? Movies, content. When was the last time you actually paid for content? So I don't know how it's supposed to work, because also musicians need to survive as well. Just as you go and buy bread, when you also buy their music, that means they're able to survive. So to an extent, we are also to blame. But I don't think that's the whole story. I think the story is actually much bigger than that. For instance, let's look at the music that's making waves on the continent. If you look at it, we have Nigerian music, South African music as well. These are probably the countries with most artists who are garnering an international appeal. But what do they have going for them? One thing that we as Zimbabwe also lack is population. I mean, our population is around 17 million. But if you go to South Africa, there are over 55 million people there. If you go to Nigeria, there are over 216 million people there. So to an extent, it's just all about economics. If a Nigerian artist releases music, even if 500,000 people buy their music at $1, that's already $500,000. But in Zimbabwe, obviously, there's the economic aspect of it, like how many people have money to spend on music. But the fact that those guys have huge populations, you actually see it. It actually reflects as well. Let's look at DSTV, for example. There are more channels dedicated to South Africa and Nigeria just based on the population. That's just one aspect of it. The other aspect probably is even the quality of music. If you look at South Africa, for example, there are producers guilds there that make sure that even the quality of songs that are coming out have a standard. These days, especially in Zimbabwe here, if one just gets a computer, they just get software and they just start making beats. You can just start making beats on your laptop, but there's no standardization. Takes us to another step. It's like the support. Let's look at even the governments of these countries. They do a lot to support the arts. Nigeria, for example, let's say in terms of Nollywood, they export over $4 billion worth of movies every year. In Zimbabwe, there's no policy in place. Pretty much there's no government support to artists. So, as they say in programming, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't invest in music, don't expect miracles to happen. So there's also another element that I forgot to mention, especially when it comes to population. If you look at the Nigerian diaspora, it's actually quite huge. There are over, I think, 1.7 million Nigerians, according to some UN stats, in the diaspora. So the odds of them, if a Nigerian artist goes, let's say, to London, the odds of them filling up even venues is actually high as compared to Zimbabwe. So it's an issue of population. All right, another element that we shouldn't even overlook is how our culture is. If you look at the Zimbabwe, it's difficult for Zimbabweans to support each other. I know this one will obviously ruffle a few feathers, but it has to be said. Zimbabweans are very good at laughing at each other, but very poor at supporting each other. Yeah, I know some people, I'm not saying people are not, they don't go out of their way to support artists, because you've seen maybe when albums are launched, people actually buy albums for a lot of money. But I mean, generally, let's look at, there's a guy a few years back who came up with a helicopter. You know, I'm not sure the name, but he came up with a helicopter, and the concept wasn't great. But instead of getting help, what happened is that people actually, I think the government banned the helicopter altogether, saying no, it's not ready to fly. But afterwards, they did not give support. You know, if this thing had happened, let's say in the US, obviously that guy will start getting support. You know, professors from universities will probably come to him and advise him on how it's done. They'll probably get a few people to support him. But what happens in Zimbabwe? We just laugh. And in the end, you know, we start loading others. That's not the only issue. Let's look at our very own Maxwell Chikumbutso. He came up with the groundbreaking technologies, but what did we do as Zimbabweans? Once again, we did not support. So in the end, we end up losing talent because we don't support our own. And there's also an element as well that we should look at in terms of competition. Let's look at even the radio stations that are there. You have like Zim Papers owning like 3 radio stations. So the very fact that there is no actual competition in the industry, you know, radio licenses should just be given to anyone who wants to get into it. So the more stations you have, that means the more competition. When there's competition, obviously the quality of the product, including the music, it also improves. The same also goes for television as well. Piracy as well, like I alluded to. When was the last time you actually bought music from an artist? You know, these days there's also streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music and stuff. So it gets easier for people to do that. But have you actually bought music on Apple Music, like to support Zimbabwean artists? And I'm sure a few people have done it. I'm not saying people don't do it, but those maybe in the diaspora, which also in turn comes back to the economic situation that we're facing. So to an extent, like I said, I agree with what Andy Muridzo was saying. But there's also some things that we can do as Zimbabweans as well to support artists. If there's a show being held, please, I know you want to get in and see your favorite artist, but just make sure you pay something at the gate. If you jump in, at the end of the day, you're fine, you've enjoyed yourself, but the artist loses in the end. Let's also make it a culture of buying music, you know? And I'm sure even the artists as well, they have to put in more effort to make sure that music is available for purchase. I don't know what sort of distribution deals they can do. Just make sure that it's actually easily accessible for people to buy it. And yeah, just don't be sharing music on Bluetooth with your friends and stuff. That also plays part. But the quality of music in the country, I mean, it's been improving. Let's look at even Mustard Seed, the album by Natty O. That album is actually world class. You know, it can compare to anything. So with the right kind of distribution and us as Zimbabweans supporting our artists, I'm sure the music industry can take on a new shape. And yeah, so more needs to be done, even on a policy level. We admonish even the government itself to do more to support local artists. Yeah, that's been my 2 cents when it comes to these subjects. I believe that there's so much potential, not just in music, but in the arts in general, in movies. You know, there's nothing stopping us from actually raking in proceeds from selling our movies the world over. Look at the quality of movies that are coming out. Look at even Cook Off, the first Zimbabwean movie to come to Netflix. You know, those are actually great achievements. But if we invest more in the arts industry, in music, and I'm saying even for ordinary Zimbabweans as well, there's nothing that's stopping you. Start investing in those films, start investing in those artists, and let's support each other and build an industry. See you in the next video.